Welcome to your show. This program, this is Soup Balls. And it's the beginning of the week. And so we talk to ourselves. We talk to the man in you. We talk to that person running that business. We talk to that particular person who is making sure that agency is working. Who and what it's really speaking of from the human perspective. Most times we concentrate on businesses, we look at policies, we look at developments, we look at issues that keep the country, the home, the businesses running. But what about the man himself? What about the woman? What about the real person that happens to be the engine of this endeavors? Okay, good. This is Soup Balls, and we are going to get talking. They say when you talk less, then issues get to happen and things happen. We ask ourselves, but you didn't say anything. Did you observe? Okay, if you observed, what did you do? Okay, let me not go that far. My name is Chooks, John Rogers Chooks, and this is Soup Balls, where we talk. So it doesn't matter where you are from, what you're doing, what is failing, what is succeeding, we talk. We've got a very short break. When we return, I will just completely let the cat out of the bag and tell you who we have here in the studio to talk to us, because that is where we are going to today. And we also expect you to talk. We can't just keeping quiet. Don't go anywhere. Soup Balls will be right back. Welcome back. This is your program. This is where we talk. This is where we tell you, you can't keep quiet. Let us talk. So today we are looking at the individual, looking at the person. If we look at the world over, people have been shouting, clamoring, some nations going for elections, some saying yes, some saying no, some shouting inflation, some saying businesses are going down, some saying indices are going up. Some African countries are struggling, be it conflict, be it internally or outside inflicted conflict, be it wars, be it economic issues. West Africa is also going through its own bit. Businesses are failing in some particular places. While those businesses are failing, some other businesses are also kicking up. But in all this, there is a human factor that drives this mechanism. So this is where we are going to focus on today. And we are looking at, no matter what the economic situation is, if the businesses are failing, how do you deal with it? You being you as a person. How can the human cope in all these trials? Using Nigeria for example. Now, for those that are wondering what's happening on Soup Balls today, we really don't have that statistics when it comes to Africans. When we record, okay, this is what the mental health statistics look like, or this is what the depression rate looks like, or this is what those getting to the edge of committing suicide look like, because we see it as a taboo on this side. But now let's get to talk to ourselves. How do you cope in difficult situations, in difficult business climate? What should you do? Who should you speak to? How should you voice out? How should you cry? How should you shout? Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to talk about this, to talk on this, and also to talk to us, while we also explore some other means of getting closure for those that have refused to talk. You must talk today. Join me as I welcome on Soup Balls for this beautiful beginning of the week to start us up, Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze. So you're welcome to Soup Balls.
Good Nigeria, Lagos, Great Africa. Be nice to be here again on Soup Balls.
You're welcome. And today we are going to talk. How can you cope in difficult times? Now we're looking at the human being, not just the business, but the human being that is pushing that particular business.
Well, I think humans were adaptive in nature, and in very difficult times, like they say, the tough gets going.
Okay, now when we say the tough gets going, what about those that are not built tough?
Well, I think it's just to up your game and then become tougher with the times.
How do they become tough? Who makes them tough? Is it the situation that makes them tough, or do they just cower and look for it to hide their heads?
Well, I think there's an English adage that says necessity is the mother of invention. And what tough times bring is innovativeness, inventiveness. I remember my mother telling me when we were still quite young, during the Civil War, how they managed, without going to the market, to ingeniously create food that they were eating, and without necessarily having to endanger themselves for almost 3 years. Now, when you look at those survival strategy, you just will agree with me that we can do same as we speak, especially when we don't have a war to contend with. Now, there are a lot of coping mechanisms that can be exploited by people, especially for us in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. In short, as a matter of fact, it is out of place, really, for us in sub-Saharan Africa to be talking about hard times.
It is out of place for us in sub-Saharan
Yes, in sub-Saharan Africa to be talking about hard times.
So, but we are talking about it.
Yes, and I think the reason
And
why
we are in it.
Yes, the reason why we are talking about hard times in sub-Saharan Africa is the fact that many people in sub-Saharan Africa have refused to face facts about their life.
The facts being,
Let me give you one very instance. A friend of mine who works in the arbitration told me of a case he was trying to manage. And he said this chap was in a certain location in Lagos here, paying about 18 million naira per annum for your house rent.
18 million.
Yes, in a house rent. And
for
this house rent. And this chap for 3 years was defaulting. The owner of the house needed the house, and he refused to move out. And so he stepped in to say, look, why don't move out and get something cheaper? And the guy said, look, God told him that he has to live in that neighborhood, and therefore he wouldn't want to move out. Now, I don't know how you're going to react to that kind of a scenario. And I think in some sense, really, many people in Africa, and especially in our environment here, are living like that. When people live beyond their means, in a rat race, as it were, just to show off that they belong to a certain class without considering what their pockets look like. So in a tough time like this, for me, there's no better coping mechanism than to first cut your budget.
First cut your budget. Okay, now we're looking at these are more like different perspectives. For that your friend's friend who who was spending 18 million for accommodation only.
Oh yeah. So this is a challenge. You can imagine, because the company is paying it really, and so because the company is the one paying, and then of course the company now has gone underground. Now you'll imagine how such company will be able to sustain that kind of a lifestyle and still be rerunning. So what I mean in essence is the fact that as Africans or as Nigerians, we must be able to deal with some certain issue.
Okay, can I ask a question?
No. Let me just land on this point.
No, if I let you land, this question will disappear.
Okay.
If we are looking at that particular example of company paying this amount for a staff, and company, if this is not just a one-off, which means it's something that they've been doing for a while.
Another company until the company now is not able to pay.
Most other companies or most other businesses are also doing the
same thing. Yeah, that's what it is.
Which means some of this hardship is self-inflated.
They are, and I think the problem in Africa is actually self-inflated, and I think those are the issues that we have to contend with in a matter of time. I remember about some years ago when my father passed, and I got to the community and I said to them, we're going to do the burial. And they asked me, I said, well, I have to make provision for the entire community. And I said, what does it take? And they said, oh, you know, we have to provide food, stuff, and the rest of it. And I said, okay, what it is that we're going to have to kill a cow, and then, of course, the meat we can distribute. And they say, no, that if you are going to get meat, the meat that is coming to the community, you don't share it. It has to come in whole. So I said to them, oh, really?
Oh, you take the cow and give to the community?
Yeah, so I said, but it doesn't necessarily have to be cow now.
Okay, you can take the goat or the fowl.
So when I said, okay, I can get a whole rabbit and give it to the community.
So since it doesn't have to be...
It doesn't necessarily have to be cow. So sometimes I think we, as individuals, must also look for creative way to deal with our problem. You look at, for example, in the midst of what they call harsh economic reality, and you still see sufficient waste in our environment. Is it birthday celebration you want to talk about? Okay, you want to talk about marriage? You want to talk about burial?
On that
or
note,
social events?
On that note, we'll keep going ahead.
I'm really wondering. That's what I'm saying. So I don't even want to go to the other side of it, which is, of course, having to, apart from cutting down on your lifestyle and what you consume and the things that you don't really need, you find a way to also dispose them. And then you make do with what is really needed. And I think that's how other people are living elsewhere. And then, of course, we can also create other streams and multiple sources of income. Or even create a source of livelihood that necessarily will not. And I think the wife of the president has demonstrated this. And he said to all state governors, you see, you can start living by example. In your state house, plant vegetable.
No.
So let's buy vegetable.
Let's leave the house. Let's leave those houses, because there is a state budget and a federal budget allocated to those houses, so they are covered.
Yeah, but what is she saying in essence is the fact that
if what I want them to say is, let's see the first lady of the states and that of the federal.
Yeah, that is
start a farm, a monogam farm.
No.
That is what we want to see.
No, that is what
and we will learn faster than the gardens behind the state houses.
She has started her farm. And as a matter of fact,
is it in the state house?
In the state house.
What portion of land do we have in the state house?
You just wait. Hold on.
In front of National Assembly and behind SS quarters.
Yes. So she has started her farm, no matter how small, and she has encouraged other state governors' wife to start a farm. You see, because leadership is by example.
Okay, good. They should tell the state governors' wives to go to Niger State and see what it means to start a farm.
Yeah. You see, the conversation here is not about the size of the farm. It's not about what you are producing for sale. It's the fact that as an individual,
you should be able to produce something that you can consume.
You want to cook a vegetable soup. And you
must it be vegetable soup?
No, just if you are salivating, then of course we can actually make that real happen. But you see, what do you really need is leaf.
Vegetable.
Yeah, vegetable leaves.
Let's call it vegetable.
That can actually be grown
around you.
Around your house. Where you live, if it is an estate, you can plant ugu on top of your fence. And you don't need to go to the market to go buy that.
Okay, so you reduce your expenses.
You reduce your expense. And then you're able to survive through the hard times.
Okay, now let's look at business owners. What should they focus on at this period, this kind of period, where either maybe the byproduct or raw materials that they need is increasing and they can't meet the quota they do produce before? What do you think business owners should focus on?
Yeah, I think business owners also need to be able to adapt, become real agile and flexible, like a lot that's happening right now in China, where flexible factories are being built that are easily convertible to produce things that the market needs at the moment. You saw that happen during the COVID, that most factories were shut down and the same factory were producing PPP for the sake. They don't need to build new factory. So the factories themselves have become very adaptive and they can actually switch and change. Now, what you also see big companies are doing is also redefining their structure. So there's a whole lot of re-engineering that is going on. People who used to have very big buildings are selling them off And then, of course, now...
When they are selling up, who is going to buy? Who has the money to buy?
Well, whether I like it or not, as population increase, a lot of people will continue to look for places to live and inhabit. So real estates are taking some of all these things up, and they are converting them to estates where people can live and do business, as it were. And so what that means is that you don't need to really own a big building for a business that you can run from the comfort of your home, especially when all things are digitized now. You don't need a very massive building. All these things can be commercialized, and then you can raise revenue. In short, that's one of the things that a lot of people are even suggesting, that in our country where people are talking about, oh, there's a deficit budget, and then, of course, we have assets that are wasting away. This can be converted into liquid cash immediately, and then, of course, use it to drive the process of growth, which we are looking at. So this can happen at individual micro level. It can also happen at the macro level of a state. So we all need to look and understand that the reality that things are not going to get better, but what needs to happen is that we must get tougher.
Did you just say things are not going to get better?
Yes, they are not necessarily going to get better, because you can understand this, and the reason why is simple. And they don't need a prophet to deceive you to say, oh, life is going to get better tomorrow. It's not going to get better, because as more children are giving birth on a daily basis,
less resources.
Less resources.
What about increasing the resources? Okay, before we increase the resources, let's look at this. West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa generally, we import more than we produce. Now we are having this issue of tough economic climate. To what extent can we start looking at things we can use as against the things we are importing, or the ones we are importing? What can we let go? What lifestyle can we let go, or what can we produce here?
Yeah, that's why I say to people who care to listen that we really don't have problem. You see, where people have problem, you will know. You can't see fire burning in a house like this, and people are sitting comfortably with tie, and they are gisting. So
the people sitting with ties.
So if fire is burning really, people will have to be on the race. Like they said in our folklore, when there's fire burning, the tortoise and his little tortoise, everybody is saving his head. You're running to get off trouble. So when you see us still very comfortable in our cocoons, and we are saying, oh, things are hard, this is hard, it means that things really are not hard. I saw a picture or a video some years ago of some of our people who were stranded, trekking through the desert, wanting greener pasture in the West. Some of them telling their story of how they have to drink their urine to survive. So those are the people who are actually through terrible times. So we are not going to that point at the moment, and that's why if there's really an issue we're talking about, people will have to put their life down to defend and save themselves. We should not be talking about importation of rice, importation of egg, importation of chicken. If we are still talking about those things in our climate today, it means that things are well off. We're actually very prosperous.
Did you just say importation of egg?
Yes.
Okay. For those that are wondering, we had a scare just a few days ago, and we were told egg was 250 naira in some areas already.
Yeah. Then
we now ask ourselves this particular question: why have we not all gone into farming?
Yeah. I remember growing up as a child. We just having some nostalgic moment earlier on in the office a while ago, when we were just relishing about some of the beautiful life we all lived as we were growing up as children. We all went to public schools, when you find that on a day-to-day basis, every day children come out to do exercises, do game because they were open field, play football and the rest of it. And then, of course, You have athletes, you have footballers. There were inter-school competitions where, of course, inter-house sport that was very, very strong and competition were happening. And then, of course, this was how we grew up as children. And this was really fostering some sense into us. We had labor days in school where you have to actually use your hand to farm in school. And when you are 14, give your cutlass to go and cut some grasses. And all of all these things trained us for thickness. And then all of a sudden we have certain private schools that had no compound, and the children stay in the classroom, or they do. And then the guy was asking, and yet we want to win Olympic medal when children are not training. So this is a kind of lifestyle that we are living.
Okay. While we live that lifestyle, let's now look at those and Nigerians and our brother countries that are going through tough times. To what extent is bad narrative and bad media playing on the psyche of the people?
I think one of the terrible things that has really happened to the psyche of the average man in Africa is the role that the media had played in amplifying the role of government in our collective poverty. And that really weakens me every time I look at it.
When you say our collective poverty, is it like an asset or a heritage?
Now, when you go to any place, of course, when you have people sit down in the media house and they are talking about the state, to say, oh, we are poor because our leaders are not thinking well, that our political leaders are not doing well, that if our political leaders were to be doing well, we would not necessarily have been poor. But recently, I stumbled on a data which really was very bewildering for me as a person, that the 2024 budget, for example, in Nigeria, by its calculation, is expected that of a GDP of about $450 billion per annum, that the federal government, in its own budget conception, were thinking that the private sector is going to drive it and is going to be putting into place about 76% of that total sum. And the money that the government has in that GDP of about 450 billion is actually just 24%. So which means we have less money with government than we have with the private people. So why is it now that all our effort is on the 24% and not on the 78% in terms of redistribution? This is a narrative that has been created by the media. That
or is it the narrative created by the media or the narrative the government has always portrayed over time?
No. You see, the problem is the fact that
a government is trying to gain election or win acceptability, and they promise we will, and we will. We are, and we are, but they don't. And over time, people have said, okay, it's the government's responsibility to do every single thing. And you just sit and relax and wait for it.
No, I don't think that's the real thing. Yes, government make promises. I said earlier on our earlier show, we say we want to take 10 million people out of poverty. That's a no mean feat. Even if you're going to say we're going to do it 10 years.
But we know government can't do that.
Yeah, because you know that, of course, government cannot create jobs. Everybody
why do they come to say it? And why do gullible people accept it?
Yeah, but that's the problem, and that's the reality, because we have also thing in the name of making government accountable to the people to say, oh, government has all the money in the whole world. And if even say, you should have had somebody who supposedly to be very educated and say, look, just let them be sharing the money for us and start to spend. Because this is the level at which people are pedestrian in terms of thinking. And you see this on our daily thing and say, government is not planning well. But I'm saying myself, look, we have to also look inward to see how do people survive in those days. That's why I made mention during the Civil War. My mother told me those stories, though I was very small, and how they had to survive the Civil War because the war was hitting. It was not as if government was feeding them. Government didn't bring anything to the table. And everything that government was doing at that time, there was no single citizen in the country who was looking for government for such empowerment like we do today. So people were made, or family taught their children to be hardworking, to be very creative, even though the wealth was also not evenly distributed. But you see, people were making hard effort to ensure that they get themselves off trouble. And this was either they are resorting to farming, and in most cases, most ingenious of our parents had to marry so many wives. not because they love sex so well. They were doing so because they were needing to raise manpower that can help make farm, that can feed the entire community. So all for this were happening in the days. Nobody was looking up to government, and all of a sudden we have come to that realization and say government must do everything for the people. So this is where, for me, the challenge is in Africa, that we are breeding a crop of very lazy individuals who don't want to dirty their hands, but then yet want to live a very good life.
If they want to live a very good life, and we have been depending on government wrongly, at what point should we start this self-scrutiny?
Yeah, but I think it should start really that people must understand that they have to take responsibility for their lives, and that nobody should be really, like if you look at it, I think it was on Elon Musk handle, I was looking at it yesterday, and he said that he thought that socialism was dead. But by the kind of conversation that he's hearing around in the US, he saw that socialism is still alive and well because of the way people are thinking. Because that individual productivity that drives, of course, the essence of life, it seems to be dead, and people are waiting on state to be able to deliver value. And this had continued, and this makes state to take more than it can chew, that has pushed states into debt. And then, of course, the instrument of governing the state, especially from the monetary perspective and the fiscal perspective, is telling and having a toll on the entire business community, and it's creating more hardship than it tends to solve. So government are charging more tax than they should. Government are raising rates more than they should, because they're trying to live up to a fake lifestyle which they don't have the capacity to carry.
So government is also living that lifestyle.
Oh yes, government is also living a very fake lifestyle. And I think that has to also stop, because if we really want to face reality, we must cut our coat according to our clothes.
Okay, we are no longer cutting according to size. It's now according to the clothes you have. Okay, now let's also look at this period where businesses are either trimming down or downsizing, or whatever phrase we want to see, or other conglomerates are shutting down in some certain countries and leaving. A lot of decisions being made now, both those being made in haste or out of hunger, are they the best decisions?
They're not the very best of decision, I can tell you. But you see, the pressure is really more from the state than elsewhere. And this is because the way politics has even played itself out right now, it has become the greatest source of wealth and livelihood. And so you can have a commissioner having 1,000 SSAs.
So for those particular SSAs, is he trying to get money down the line, or he's preparing for next election?
When you can even have, I was told a story recently, I think it was in University of Calabar, that they said a student union leader who was elected into an office also appointed over 100 SSA.
Student union.
Union leader, yeah, of course. So it's to tell you the level of
he's learning from those
at the top, yeah. Because so this is the level we have degenerated to. So we must be able to take away from all the conversation, the narratives that we currently carry, which are not right. And people are actually making references that that's how they are doing it in the Western countries. And so we are importing a whole lot of lies into our culture that are not sustainable. And the elite has not also helped the matter, because they're also in a craze and drive to hold off political office. They also are feeding the people with lies and things that they know that are not realistic, things they know that are not doable. They are throwing them on the table, and people are listening to them and say, oh, this is my guy, this is credible, so anything he say must be right. And we are throwing all manners of data that are not verifiable on the table, and at the end of the day, people are get confused. So what I feel should be real thing to do is that at individual level, people must ask themselves some basic questions. If I don't work for government, does it mean I cannot? Where in the world is government employing the whole citizen? Is there any country like that? And that must be only in heaven, I guess.
I think we have to ask who has gone there. Okay, before we find a citizen that has gone and returned with that news. Now, you talked about culture. Where is a place of culture? Where is a place of value and purpose? Because if we look at this particular issue and the rate at which we are going now, we ask ourselves, okay, have we left some things behind and pursuing things that are not real? farming communities are no longer farming communities. Working communities are no longer working communities. Breeding communities are no longer breeding communities. We are all pursuing one form of education, which we don't use at the end of the day. So where have we left our purpose and value?
I think it's for us. It all started with a craze about apologies to all the conversations. Is where we started to ignore basic public institutions and then focus on private-driven institutions, and that really became worse from the 1990 early 1999 when civil regime came back. That a lot of what used to be the state institutions. Now becoming moribund, especially the school system, which was one of the agents of transferring value from one generation to the other. I just told you about how sports became like a platform to launch a lot of people into limelight because there was competitiveness within the school system. Even those who were, you don't need to be an Greek student. I remember very vividly, and I was saying it earlier this morning with a sense of nostalgia. In my primary school days, we have days to go to garden, school garden. And when at the end of the session...
You had a school garden?
Yes, we did. The yams...
The school was not big?
The school was very big. The yams are harvested...
We had a school farm.
The yams are harvested...
Where you won't see the end of the farm.
The melon are harvested, the granules are harvested, the cocoyam are harvested.
What happens to it?
And at the end of the school session, as they are giving us report card, they also give us tuber of yam.
Okay.
Some measure of melon and granules.
From the school farm?
From the school farm as a reward for the work we did for the year. So that was sufficient motivation for us. So you find that this was training us to actually put our hands to work. But today, you're having people who are having school of agriculture and hands are not dirty. So this is the really thing that we need to reinvent in all of our conversation. How can we make people really more productive today? That people are able to take responsibility for their life and not be waiting for a third party to come intervene. That creation of wealth is possible. There's processes and procedure that people can take to earn wealth. And if those policies, if those principles, we stick by them, we will be able to really make the kind of fortune. I heard David Abioye said some 3 days ago, one very statement that was so profound, that learning is better than earning.
Learning
is better than earning.
Is better than earning. With that, just that line, we'll go on this very short break. When we return, we'll focus on the individual, the real people that are going through these hard times, and we'll get to talk to ourselves and ask ourselves certain questions. Should we let ourselves get depressed, or should we fight it off and get our hands dirty and reform? We'll get back. Don't go anywhere. Souk Pulse is still here. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is Souk Pulse, and we are looking at business climate, difficult business climate. And we are asking ourselves, how can the businessman, how can you cope? So we'll get talking. We'll have Dr. Idahosa here, and he's been talking and educating us. He's gone to heaven and back. We will give you that particular gist maybe on another episode of Souk Pulse. My name is Chooks, John Rogers Chooks. Now let's talk to the person, the individual. For someone who is going through a hard time in his or her business, is there a support system or a place the person can go and just open up and talk to? Should there be, or is there, or will you tell the person to talk to somebody?
Well, again, I refer to the book by Ridalio on why nations are poor, why nations are rich. And he took the history of the world and said the world is always moving in a circle. you have the circle of abundance, which leads into debt, and debt leads into internal crisis, and those internal crises brings about terrible times. And then the terrible times brings out value for educations and learning. And as these values are imbibed, it creates a new level of prosperity.
So what level are we now?
We are in the level of suffering. And
did he put timeline on those particular steps?
Yes, I think he did. He says the period of suffering don't last too long.
So long, like?
Sometimes 10, 15 years or thereabouts.
That's a long
But the period of prosperity lasts like 100 to 200 years. And then, of course, you see the cycle grow. Now, what happens is that when people are passing through hard time, is actually a period for people to sit down for sober reflection, now to think creatively, and that creative thinking will lead to innovation. That now people will start to put value on education. And now, when I mean education, I am using the word in every good sense of it, not just the paper certificate which we drive right now, is that people are focusing on the acquisition of talent or development of their talent and acquisition of new skills. And now what this will mean is this is going to be the new revenue earner for these people, and they are going to put themselves in that position where they are able to creatively cater for their needs. Take, for example, if we look at the Jewish book, talks about the story of the dream of Pharaoh, of the 7 lean year and the 7 fat year. So what Ray Dalio was simply saying is not different from the dream that Pharaoh had, that he had season where you have big animals, well fatted, and then a lame one just came from the side and they ate up the big ones. So, and when, of course, Joseph had to interpret that dream and say, Pharaoh, yes, the dream's the same, they are true, but it's the same. What is just telling you, God is showing you the severity of that season of abundance and the season of want or lack. Now, you must understand that if there's going to be a season of prosperity, which we currently are, we must deliberately have to cultivate saving and investment so that we can survive the season of lack. Now, what you have seen happen, whether at the individual level, corporate level, or the state level, is the fact that we have never been able to manage the season of our prosperity and abundance very well. And so when the season of lack or want comes, we get into this complaint and start to blame each other for the things that we have not done well. So that's why I'm saying there are a lot of things we can do to reduce the pressure that we are in. I say, for example, to people, especially parents, there's nothing that says that because your child is a private school, it's a guarantee that it's going to get a better life to those who are in public school. Because what you see is that there are a lot of people who are working, and all they have earned, they have struggled to use it to pay for school fees. And when those incomes stop to come, even in just 1 year, life becomes very unbearable.
That still takes us back to the first question. Cut your coat.
Your coat, according to your cloth. So that is what it is. So you are going to be looking at it. That what's my total income in a year? Now, if I have a total income of 6 million, for example, per annum, I can gamble school fees if I have 3 or 4 children of 3 million. That's a near suicide.
Okay. Other issues have not cropped.
So you find that on a daily basis, they're living from hand to mouth because you have set a target for yourself that are not attainable. All in the name that you are thinking that you want to give your children the best of education. And I feel really, if, for example, our public schools are not delivering, all our parents, we should gather there and tell the teacher, you must give our children good education. So this is possible when the schools are interfacing with the teachers, and then we will know how to make that system work for all of us, rather than create undue expenses for ourselves, even when government, in its own little way, have made provisions. Teachers are employed and they are in the system. It's all of us to hold those teachers accountable to ensure that our children are learning. So if my child comes from school at the end of the day and I check the notebook and he had not written anything in a day, I should go back to the headmaster and say, look, my son came to school today, he didn't write anything. Is it he who didn't write, or there was no teacher to teach? Now, when 3 or 4, 5 parents go to school to make trouble like that, the system will sit up.
Okay, now we're looking at issues where we, the people, have refused to stand up to our own responsibility.
Yes, and then we have created an alternative for ourselves, which is to pay more elsewhere, that is beyond our means, and then we come back to blame the government for not doing well.
But there is always a punching bag, and if the government happens to be the punching bag, why exonerate them?
I'm not exonerating anybody really here, but what I'm saying is that we must face reality, and we must deal reality in its face. To say that you as a child, somebody told me a story, and it was quite very frustrating. And he said, look, if you give a Jew $100, he will look for a book to buy. I say, if you give American $700 of the same age as a child, he will look for an ice cream. So that tells you the kind of mindset. And I think that can be translated into an environment.
Okay, I am happy you didn't mention an African, but let's let's continue. Now, for the business person, for the prospective business person, where or how can they start seeking help and advice at this period?
You see, if you look at the system right now, where businesses are really happening, and if you want to corroborate what is happening in those industries, if we take, for example, our banking industry, that are really declaring huge profits at the moment.
They don't ever declare loss, except somebody embezzles the bank.
Yeah. So with those huge profits, what do you see? Increased lifestyle, bogus wage for the executives,
They've made the money.
investment, private jets, and all manner of luxury that seems not sustainable because the money is flowing. They only see the current prosperity and no room to plan for the rainy day. But you can imagine when, of course, the current CBN governor read out the Riot Act when he spoke at the bankers' conference, that there was no bank strong enough to support a $1 trillion economy in Nigeria. What did we see? They ran back to the markets
to recapitalize. But the banks themselves and the administrators, both at the CBN, before that particular pronouncement was made, they all ran their business as a small business. They were not looking...
No. It was not... You see, the goal...
If we're looking at a $1 trillion economy...
No. The goal of every business is actually to make profit and expound.
But it does not run that way.
Now, what you see is...
They were comfortable at where they were.
I'm just using that as a kind of a model to tell you the way we think as business people. That immediately we see plenty money in our hand, what we think of first is luxury. The man who has been wearing a Barmaid tie will now begin to offer a designer.
And there are still Barmaid designer ties.
Well, I don't know about that. So you see, the fund that you would have channeled into building a stronger base for the business, we use it for luxury. And at the end of the day, the business or the economy dip,
and the
business has nothing to fall back on. And I think this is the issue we also talk about the state, where, for example, all the resources that we would have put together to save for the rainy day, we have ate it.
Now we are in that rainy
day now, and then there's no umbrella to cover us. Now look at it.
Did you really go to that umbrella?
Yeah. So what I'm making is this. Singapore has a law.
Okay.
That law that government of Singapore had made huge savings. And they said successive government cannot spend the saving
that another government made.
Yes.
Okay.
They can only make the money that they will spend.
Okay, which means whatever any previous government
has made
is invested for the state.
They put it in a safe account.
Not invested, it's just there.
So at the point, by 1981, they came to the conclusion and said, look, this money is growing every day. What are we going to do to it? So they now came again with an amendment to that law that whatever that money is should be invested.
To make more.
To make more money. Now, the proceeds from that investment will now be shared 50-50. The current government can spend 50% of the proceeds of that investment, not the capital.
Okay.
And then the other 50% should be saved.
Okay.
And when the debate came in the presentation of the 2024 budget...
But hold on. Can we still go back from this particular analysis you gave now? Now, even the money the government, any present government is making, they should also save.
Yes, that is it. Because there's a law that you cannot go beyond balanced budget.
Okay.
You must create your own surplus.
Okay. Question again. African leaders, do they know about this Singapore story?
I guess some of them are intelligent enough to know. Because at the debate recently in 2024...
Did you use are intelligent enough?
Enough, yes. I think they're intelligent enough to know.
Okay.
So the debate
so
at the parliament...
Since some of them are intelligent enough to know, why can't they just copy 5%?
Well, that's a question for another day. Some people talk about what they call political will to be able to do some things that people know. But you see, the point I'm making is that at the debate this year, they said younger people in the parliament were making a case that why is it that they have so much money in the savings and that they are looking for more money from the people, that the money in the savings should be spent so that rather than take more money from the people. And I remember Lee Wong, who was the immediate past prime minister, stood up at the parliament to make a case why that money cannot be spent. Because people created it, and the people that created it were not enjoying any benefit. They did it out of sacrifice, that this current generation must also make their sacrifice for the future of their children. But he made a remark. I said, when COVID came in 2020, and through the period of COVID, that Singapore drew 64 billion US dollars from that savings to cushion the effect of COVID on the Singaporeans. Now, that's a lesson that we cannot learn from, that there's nobody who can ever grow without savings and investment. And if our country or our individual life can be meaningful, we must definitely and deliberately learn the art of saving and investments.
The act of saving and investment. We are in that particular rainy day right now, and you went to, let's leave that umbrella side of it. Though he went there. Now, for everyone who happens to be in sub-Saharan Africa, it doesn't matter what name your country bear, but know this, it's your responsibility to get yourself, myself, out of the wood.
But you know that because the umbrella is no longer taking the rate now, it's like everybody has stolen. Now we are using broom and we are trying to sweep.
Well,
it's a big challenge, honestly.
As we are right now, we are not covered, neither is the environment clean. So it's my responsibility and yours to get yourself and ourselves out of the wood. So whatever business you are into, doctor said we should get creative. So if we need to align with other businesses to get products to the market, remember that is where the solution is. Our ability to bring products that are needed to the market and let the market buy. Then you can have some resources to go back and produce more. Investment, then save some. And let's also remember, just like he said, stop consuming negative narratives. It kills the spirit, makes you lazy. It gives you the strength not to do anything. You just believe that what's it what? And it's not just the government. We are all the government and we are responsible. Thank you very much for coming on Super Boss.
It was my pleasure. And now I'm looking forward to a Nigerian that works for all, where every man take responsibility for his life. And like the Nehemiah principle, if we all build and clean the front of our houses, the whole society will be clean.
Yes, for those that are Nigerians, front of our houses, your domot, make sure your domot is presentable, not just presentable, clean enough. And take responsibility for your family. We are Africans. We take care of our brothers. We don't let them roam. This is Soup Pulse, and we love you. Be your brother's keeper. My name is Chooks, John Rogers Chooks. We'll do this again tomorrow. Have yourself a beautiful, beautiful evening. Bye.